Hello, my name is Caitlin Shivelbein, and today we are going to be talking about why it is important to manage your student loan debt and why you should try to keep it to a minimum. So, if you look at the second slide of this presentation, it will go over the national averages from the 1976-77 school year and the 2006-2007 school year. Based on this information, we can see that in the 76-77 school year, most college students could afford to go to a four-year public institution by just working a part-time job, if not a summer job. And if you look at the 2006-2007 school year, the cost has skyrocketed astronomically. So the total cost of attendance in 76 and 77 was $2,275 for 1 year, bringing the total cost of a four-year degree to $9,100. In 2006-2007, the total cost of attendance was $15,434, and your degree cost was $61,734. And you're probably thinking, well, yeah, college is expensive and not everybody gets to go, but why does that matter? Well, why it matters is because you look at your debt to income ratio. So the debt that you have now incurred, if you're going to finance 100% of your student costs, is roughly $62,000. So $62,000, and the average loan interest rate is anywhere from 6.32 to 8.34% interest, which has also increased in the last 30 years. And with the growing cost of attendance and the higher interest rates on loans, it takes college students astronomically longer to repay those student loans. And they say if you're going to have to get student loans to go to college, the one rule is you should never borrow more than what your first year's salary would be. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, what's the average salary in the United States for a college graduate? Well, the average salary for a college graduate is $50,556, and that was as of 2016. And it hasn't really changed much since then. But that is the average. Some jobs pay more than this and some jobs pay less. Take engineering, for example. The average engineer, fresh out of college, will make about $65,000, while a first-year teacher will only make $35,000. So the engineer could finance 100% of their student cost if they went to a public school and borrowed wisely, while a teacher could not. They could only finance about half and be able to afford to pay for it after they graduated. You're probably wondering, okay, well, why does this matter? So in 2016, the national average student loan debt was $37,000 roughly, and the interest rate was a lot lower then, and it was 4.29%, which means that you would pay an additional $8,000 in interest on top of your loan, and your average payment would be $382 a month. I know for me that since I'm graduating in May, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford $400 a month in student loan payments. And I think I have roughly about that in student loan debt. So, according to studentloan.gov website, I would need a job that pays at least $48,000 to be able to afford that amount in student loan. If I didn't, I could do what is called income-based repayment, which sounds good in theory, but in the long run, it really wouldn't be, because I'm going to be paying an additional $18,000 over the course of 20 years just so my payment is about $100 less a month. And if you finance our degrees today with the higher interest rates, you're going to be financing about $62,000 with an interest rate of 7.33%, which means that your payment is going to be higher than $400 a month. And that is what brings me to my next point. Most graduates are not able to afford their student loan payments. 2.6 million borrowers have went into forbearance, and forbearance is where a loan agency allows you to kind of temporarily shut off the payments on your loans for a set number of months to help you get back on track. Maybe you don't have a job yet and you're waiting to get a job and you can't really do income-based repayment. So they're like, okay, we'll cut you a break for a few months. We're going to allow you to freeze your loan and not make payments and not go into a default or a deferment. And so they allow you to do this for 6 to 12 months, depending on the loan agency, and then you have to pay it. What they don't tell you is you're only allowed to go into forbearance once on your loans, which is why it's important. While the 2.6 million borrowers that are in forbearance, there are 4.3 million borrowers that have defaulted on their student loans. And this is a type of delinquency that lowers your credit score. This means that you missed payments and that they have reported it to a credit agency, which will actually hurt your credit score. And because of the amount of debt, and if you have defaulted on these loans, you now are not able to qualify for other loans. Say you got married and you want to buy a house, or you're out of college and the car that you're driving needs replaced and now you need a new car. Well, a lot of times you can still get loans on those, but those loans are going to be astronomically high. And so you have to borrow wisely while you're in college to make sure that you can afford to live after you graduate from college while calculating in those student loan payments. So I bet a lot of you are wondering, how do we go about managing this debt? My advice to you would be keep your borrowing to a minimum and pay the interest every year if possible, so that way you don't accumulate interest and build interest on interest, if that makes sense. Because every year that you don't pay the interest, it then gets converted into principal, and then interest builds on top of that every year. Also, what I would recommend is work a part-time job to cover the cost of living and let student loans just cover your tuition. It will cut your loans in half if you are able to work a part-time job where you can afford to pay for your room and board or your rent and living necessities like electricity and things like that. It helps tremendously. Also, last but not least, I would say be smart, put together a budget at the beginning of the year and stick to it. If you do this and you hold yourself accountable, you're going to be less likely next year to be like, oh, well, last year I ran out of money, so maybe I should borrow more money this year because I know I don't want to give things up. Well, if you hold yourself accountable and you have that part-time job and you're working hard and you don't take out the extra money, you're going to be thanking yourself after you graduate because it's going to decrease your student loan payments. It's also going to decrease the amount of time you have to pay on your student loans, which is very important, especially with the interest rates on loans now going to variable rates where the interest changes year to year. So these are some things that I think that you should think about and consider, and I hope that you enjoyed this presentation.